This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody. Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
Why did he quit? Because he was getting the crap beat. Yes, because he was getting the crap beat out of him.
He would have quit.
Yes.
He would have quit no matter
he
what.
Quit because he was getting the crap beat out of him.
He didn't want to play football anymore.
Because he was getting the crap beat out of him.
I disagree with that. I think Andrew Luck just didn't want to play anymore.
Because he was going out there every Sunday. And
I disagree. I think he just didn't want to play anymore.
Right, I'll tell you why he didn't want to play anymore.
No, he quit like 10 years early for no reason.
He couldn't play. He was so hurt at the end of his career. He was so banged up at the end of his career.
Fine.
He was literally not.
Yeah,
Andrew Luck. This is a bizarre take. Andrew Luck was not fine.
Do you think I could get through the show today without pissing people off, Alex?
Without getting somebody threw that right on Twitter.
Right on Twitter, and then they'll tell us that they don't listen to the show. Right. They don't listen to the show, but we're gonna post things that you say on Twitter.
No, I think the account that posted has been a pretty loyal listener of ours.
Let's not give him any credit.
I'm just saying.
I'm not going to piss anybody off.
No, I'll give our listeners credit.
I'm not going to piss anybody off. No, I love our listeners.
I'll give our listeners credit where it's due, especially if they're going to throw you under the bus like that.
I love our listeners, but I feel like I would say once a month. Yeah. Maybe it's a little bit more frequently than that, Morel. Maybe you can tell me if it's more frequently, but like once a month I say something on here or on Unfiltered that pisses people off. And it's either we get bombarded by emails about it, or it's all over Twitter or whatever, and everybody's just like coming at me because that's
good radio, baby.
Maybe I don't know.
No, you took something that is settled fact, and you had me debating it like it was a take. You heard me in that clip say this is a weird take. It was settled fact, and we're debating it like it was a take. That was something for me. Good job.
Sometimes, like you said, sometimes you have to exaggerate a little bit, and you have to say some things that are maybe a little bit controversial. And
don't show everybody how the sausage is
just to get the people going. That's all. All right. Anyways, Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22 here for you. Today we are going to talk about OTAs. The first look at Patriots OTAs. Both Alex and I were out there on Monday to watch the Patriots practice, and I have a whole list of things I want to get to, and we'll get to those in a second. But before we really get going here, hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals for the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places, and easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. All right, so here's where I want to start with Monday's practice. And on Tuesday, Alex, I gave you this take off the air in our show before the show, which is just our texts back and forth about these things. And I told you that I wasn't thrilled about the reps and the efficiency of practice. I don't want to give that take again. I think we can move off that. It was one practice. Let's see what next week looks like.
Have you given it on the air yet?
Yeah. I did on Unfiltered on Tuesday.
All right.
Basically, all I felt like was the big thing for me on Monday and throughout this entire spring program is, what does a Gerard Mayo practice look like? And I think in a lot of ways that is almost more important at this point of the year than what each individual player looks like, because we'll get to that. Like training camp, when the pads go on, is when we'll really get to start and analyzing individual players and position groups and all the stuff that we do on here. We'll get to that point. Right now, it's just interesting to me, and maybe this is a little inside baseball, but it's just interesting to me to evaluate somebody else's practice. Like, I have only watched, and take joint practices out of it because those don't really count, I've only watched a Bill Belichick OTA at this point as a professional reporter. I've only ever watched a Bill Belichick OTA. And one of the things that I always thought was so fascinating about how Belichick ran a practice was how efficient practice was. There just wasn't a whole lot of standing around. Everybody had a job to do. Everybody had a responsibility. Every minute was allocated for somehow. They never had guys just standing around doing nothing. And this practice, I felt like, was a little bit different in that regard. But I understand. I got, some people pushed back on me on Tuesday at PU to not overreact to one practice. They're probably right. Let's see what it looks like over the next couple weeks. But I think we both felt like this a little bit watching, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just watching it and seeing Vidarian Lowe get reps at left tackle over Caden Wallace, and Bailey Zappi get reps at quarterback over Drake Maye. And you can trickle that all the way down the entire lineup. I get that rookies have to earn it. There's a seniority about it. But I think one thing that you hear so much about nowadays with the rules and with the CBA and all this kind of stuff, you only have a finite amount of practice time and on-field work in the NFL calendar that you aren't preparing for an opponent. Like once you get into the regular season and you have game weeks and you're practicing Wednesday through Friday and it's all game plan oriented, you're not going to be giving the third string tackle reps.
Right.
When you're getting ready for the Cincinnati Bengals. Like that's just not going to happen. So this time of year is when a guy, and I don't want to just harp on Drake Maye because I think that, it furthers the point. A guy like Caden Wallace, who is switching positions from right tackle to left tackle, needs every single rep that he can get. Every single rep that he can get. And this time of year, especially at tackle and quarterback, when there's no contact and all you're doing is really going through the fundamentals of those reps, it's maybe even more important in my mind than when the bullets really start flying. Because if you're not ready for that,
right,
by having a solid foundation in the spring, and then you get to the summer and the pads go on, and now Matthew Judon's coming off the edge at you and you're Caden Wallace, it's going to look ugly. So I think that that's the big takeaway that I had, first of all, and then we can get into the individual players. But I just felt like we need to see a little bit more of the guys that your draft and develop team, right?
Yeah.
The rookies are the future. They're the core.
Develop them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree with you. I do think it's important to put the caveat on there that this is one practice.
Yes.
And they've had, one or two more since. I think they're practicing today behind closed doors. Like, we don't get to see everything. So maybe it was, day one. All right, we're going to put the veterans out there, let the rookies see how an NFL practice is run. And maybe we go out there next week and it's a ton of Drake Maye and it's a ton of Caden Wallace. So, I'll kind of hold off on that one practice. I hope that's not indicative of the full plan, but I will give them for now the out of kind of, and Gerard may have talked about this, that the way they split reps, they may do it one way one day and another way another day, and we're not there all the days, so it's tough to say. But I do hope Caden Wallace changing positions. Drake Maye, you're trying to get him ready. You're trying to develop him. And if he's not going to start the season, which I'm okay with, I think it's really hard. You now have to do two things at once. You have to get Jacoby Brissett ready to start the season, and you have to get going on Drake Maye's development. So to also throw Bailey Zappi in there, who, some reports have indicated he's probably not a part of the long-term plans, what does that accomplish? And I've seen people say, well, if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt, you don't want to go to Drake Maye yet. You got to have the next guy up. That should be the third most important thing.
Right.
That shouldn't be more important than Maye's, because ideally that just means you want to get Maye ready even quicker. So it was one practice. I do think that distribution was notable if it stays that way. The other thing I'll say, and I think you're the one who pointed this out to me when we were out there, we've seen in the past under Belichick, and I don't think this is just a Bill thing. Like, I think a lot of teams do this. Those practice fields out back, if you've ever been to training camp, it's two fields.
Yeah.
They have two fields.
Side by
and
side.
Right now you have 90 players on the roster. You have like a full two teams.
Yeah.
You could have multiple groups repping at once, and they only did that very briefly on Monday.
Yeah.
For the most part, it was one offensive unit, one defensive unit, and I'll say this, credit to the rookie quarterbacks. When Bailey Zappi was out there running the offense, Drake Maye, you could see him talking to Alex Van Pelt, talking to Jacoby Brissett about what was going on. And there were a couple times where I saw Joe Milton, he's standing behind Bailey Zappi or Jacoby Brissett. And he's like actually miming through, the snap, the drop back, all of that, what he would do. So Bill used to harp on that a lot. Like, even if you're not in the play,
take the
mental reps, right? Stay ready, be ready. So it's good to see those guys doing that. But you could have, and this is what they did very late in practice, you could have Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye on one field in Bailey Zappi and Joe Milton on the other with the backups. And that way, it's just more reps. It's more reps available. So, again, maybe it's the first practice. They just wanted to get their feet under them.
Yeah.
But that's something I would like to see them at. If they're not going to change the order, at least multiple, get multiple units out there and double the reps you have available.
That's a great point. And I just think that I don't want people to get bogged down by order. Like, I'm not really all that worried about the order of things. What I'm more worried about is, we talked to Bill O'Brien a little bit about this last year when there was some indecisiveness about the quarterbacks. It's really hard to get more than 2 quarterbacks ready to play.
Right.
And so if you're giving the lion's share of the reps to Jacoby Brissett because he's your starter for the beginning of the year, which is fair, fine, then someone is losing reps if Bailey Zappi's in the mix here. And right now it's Drake Maye, and it shouldn't be Drake Maye. I don't care about Joe Milton. I know. I'm sorry. I just don't. How many reps he gets. And I hope that he develops into a player for him.
Well,
but I don't care about volume for Joe Milton.
Here's what I'll say about Joe Milton. I do think they should keep 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah,
and he's the most likely third. They're going to keep 3,
That's
right?
fair.
I don't think Zappi's going to be one of them. So, are you keeping Joe Milton, or do you have to go out and find this year's Nathan Rourke, Will Greer, whoever? I'm not saying the first day of OTAs was going to decide that, but I'm hoping at some chance, and maybe this is what the preseason games are for, but I'm hoping that at some chance we get to see whether or not Joe Milton can be that.
Yeah, that's fair. I just look at it and say they have too many quarterbacks.
Yeah. Gerard Mayo said that.
They have too many quarterbacks. I think they're aware of it. Albert Breer reported it, and he had talked to Gerard for the story, so it's probably coming from some solid intel. They have too many quarterbacks. It's really hard to run practice with 4 quarterbacks and have everybody have – if you're trying to get everybody equal opportunity, which is sort of what it felt like, besides Jacoby, who kind of dominated the reps, but for the next 3, Zappi, Drake Maye, Joe Milton, it felt like they were trying to get them equal opportunity. You're not really getting any of them true work in at that point.
Unless – and I'm not necessarily saying I believe this, but I'm just thinking out loud here. I mean, they've harped competition. Do you think there's a part of them that Zappi's actually competing with Brissett for the starting job?
I thought of that, and I think there's a chance, because I do think if all things were equal, that if we were just going based off of results, that Zappi could push Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah.
But Jacoby Brissett's value, his experience, his mentorship, like that's such a big part of the equation right now for the Patriots. If you just told me in a vacuum, do I think that Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi could be in a legit quarterback competition, I would say yes. But at the same time, that's not the situation. There's more context to the situation.
Well, and that's why I would hope that's not the case, but I wonder if they look at it and they say, Jacoby's here. He's going to be a resource one way or the other. We're going to let Zappi compete.
Yeah.
And again, I would just get your starter ready, because if that's the case, find out early. Find out early so you can, even if Zappi does beat him out, now it's Brissett or Zappi is one guy and Drake Maye is the other.
Yeah.
Because those 2 guys, the starter, which should be Jacoby Brissett, but the starter and Drake Maye need to be the 2 getting the majority of the reps.
Yeah. I agree with that. All right. The other thing that I wanted to hit on off the top, and then we can open up the phone lines and emails too.
Yeah.
I think that there's, and I'm saying this, I'm not singling anybody out. We said at the top of the show, everybody gets mad at me, right? I'm not singling anybody out. I'm saying it for myself too. I think that we have to be careful with Drake Maye's, our assessment of Drake Maye. And I think what I'm hearing a lot of is, first of all, even somebody like me that is as nerdy about this kind of stuff as anybody, none of us are quarterback experts in terms of mechanics and footwork. Like, none of us coach quarterbacks, okay? So to get into the details of how his footwork looks and how his mechanics look, and he's tapping the ball and his shoulders are shrugging and all this kind of other stuff, I think is doing him a big disservice. He's a young player. He's raw. We knew that coming in. And it's his first true NFL practice. Rookie minicamp doesn't count.
Right.
It's his first true NFL practice. So I just hope that we are careful with how we assess things with Drake Maye moving forward from a mechanical perspective, because already based off of really 2 practices, if you want to count rookie minicamp, but Monday as well with OTAs, I'm hearing a lot of, what's the word? Just criticism, nitpicking of, he's got this hitch in his throw, and he's got this tick now at the tapping of the ball, and he's got, all these different things that we're throwing out there. It's totally fair to be critical. It's totally fair to tell you what your eyes see. But on this show, what I think is most important at all this is I want to kind of break down the things into 2 categories of what I think are legitimate things that he needs to work on, not concerns, but things that he needs to work on mechanically, and things that I think that are either missing the point or kind of getting a little bit overblown, I guess, about his mechanics. So I have a couple of different things that I've heard, and a couple of different things that I've seen as well, that I want to put in those 2 buckets. What's a legitimate thing that I'm worried about? Not worried, but a legitimate thing that he needs to work on, and what's the things that are getting a little bit out of control. And I think that just starting with the out of control, because I think that's the easiest way to start.
Yep.
The tapping of the football is a non-issue. It's a non-issue. Now, if he's, as an old football, if he's burping the baby, that's different, right? What he's doing is he's tapping the football because it's a mechanical cue, right? It's a rhythm thing. And what he's trying to do is you want your hips to fire first.
Right.
So you want to keep your upper body closed to the target, and you want your hips to fire first, because then it creates like a coil, right, where you're like working on the axis of your body to kind of snap and create that torque to drive the football. Like when we see Dak Prescott warming up and he's doing the hip thing and everybody's making fun of him for it, that's what he's trying. That's the motion that he's trying to warm up or get loose, trying to do. So when you tap the ball, like a lot of quarterbacks do, and I'll get to that in a second. When you tap the ball, what you're doing is you're giving yourself a rhythmic cue of fire the hips, right? Start the motion.
Right.
While what it also does is it keeps your front, your top of your body closed. So when I say, closed, you want your shoulders like this, and your shoulders are going to fly open like that. You want them to stay closed until your hips fire. If you're opening before your hips fire, then the whole mechanical chain is broken. And
then you're not getting any lower body.
Right. And now all you're throwing with is your arm, which is what you want to avoid. So the tapping of the football is something that old quarterback cliche, like old quarterback teachings from 30 years ago, would tell you that that's a bad habit. The main reason why is because it might slow down your release by like a tick of a second, and it gives the defense a cue that you're about to throw the ball, right? That was what people used to say. Then, as time progressed, somebody named Tom Brady started tapping the ball. And I don't think anybody's jumping Tom Brady's throws because he's tapping the football.
Right.
Didn't really seem to be an issue for him. So Tom Brady started tapping the ball. Aaron Rodgers taps the ball. Patrick Mahomes taps the ball. Matthew Stafford taps the ball. Like, these are just some guys recent that I can, off the top of my head, that I know do this. And I actually think that it could be a good thing for Drake Maye, because we are, the Patriots are trying to tie his mechanical chain together and keep him sound. And if it takes that little cue to make him help him do it, then I actually think it's a good thing. Now, it has to be efficient. It has to be quick, and it has to be part of the overall motion. You don't want him going out of his way to bring the football to his offhand and tap the ball. The other guy, just really quickly, I thought it was funny, that was tapping the ball was Caleb. So
Williams.
So Caleb was tapping the ball in Bears practice. I didn't hear anybody being like, well, he's burping the baby.
The other thing is, you mentioned this being efficient too. Sometimes I know, like with Brady, if it's a play where you really have to get the ball out, he just wouldn't do it. Like there were certain throws
if it's
where
like
just,
quick game, or if it's a screen, receiver perimeter screen. Yeah, of course.
The other thing is there's a difference. I think what people are maybe mistaking it, and you touched on this a little bit, what's called burping the baby, right?
Yeah.
So there's tapping the ball, which is tap and throw, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're just listening, I'm doing this with a water bottle. If you hear that shaking around.
Yeah.
burping the baby is different. That's where you're in the pocket, right? And you're waiting to throw,
right,
and you're tapping the ball.
It's what Drew Bledsoe
right.
used to do.
So that's bad. You don't want to do that. And the big reason, I think there's a couple of reasons, but like the big reason is if you don't have two hands on the football, you know, you're tapping it, and a pass rusher comes around and boom, knocks it out.
To me,
it's ball security.
Right, but to me, that is holding. The problem with Drew is that he used to hold the ball forever. Like, it's not.
Well, no. It's not even that. It's because this was something with Rodgers out of college, actually. I remember this when he first came in the draft. The two things where he held the ball high, and he would pat it, and it makes it a very easy target for pass rushers to get their hands on. In the pocket, you don't want to be tapping the ball. In the pocket, you want two hands on the football. But if it's one quick before you throw, you know, if pass rusher gets there in that 10th of a second, all power to him. Yeah. That's different than just sitting there and repeatedly tapping the ball.
Yeah, I think that some of these things, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to Drake Maye and Alex Van Pelt soon about this, because I'm curious, and even TC McCartney too.
Yeah.
I'm curious if this is something that they're telling him to do versus,
I mean,
is he doing it on his own or what?
Didn't he do it a little bit in college?
Not that I saw as much as what he tried to do on Monday. If they're telling him to do this, then there's a method to the madness. If he's just all of a sudden ticking, then that's a different story. But I don't think that's what's going on. I think what's going on is that he is trying to cue himself up or have a rhythm to his motion so that he's more mechanically sound through the motion. And that's exactly why Brady used to do it. It was a rhythmic cue for Brady. And Brady did it, and I know this is not a great example because I know you're going to tell me he sucks. But I always remember there was a segment, I think it was on one like a Monday Night Football broadcast or something like that, where they talked to Jimmy G about tapping the ball. And he said that he always was told as a kid that was a bad habit, don't do it. And then he got to New England, and Brady started tapping the ball, and he was like, well, I feel more comfortable, more natural doing it. And this guy's tapping the ball, and he's winning Super Bowls every other year. So I now think that this is probably overrated in terms of it being a bad thing.
Yeah, if you're using it correctly, it's fine. If it's just that one tap and go, then there's actually a reason to it. It's when you get in the pocket and you're doing it without purpose that it becomes an issue.
Yeah. So that thing I put in the bucket of non-issue. I actually think that it's purposeful that they're trying to do it with him. The two things that I put in that I think really are things that I think need to be worked on for him. The number one thing is the load up to his throw. Like his release time and his load up it needs to be more efficient.
Well, here's the one thing I will tell people. He's never going to have the quickest release time because he has really long arms.
Yeah.
And those quarterbacks, like it's just, your arm's got to move. It's got to cover more distance.
Yeah.
So he's always going to have a little bit longer of a release. But there's still ways he can cut it down.
So he's got a little bit of a hitch with his shoulders. There's no doubt about that. Like when he comes and he starts to separate his hands and he comes out, his whole shoulders kind of just like go up. Like his whole body goes up, and it's not an efficient or like smooth motion. So that's going to have to be fixed because those split seconds in the NFL do matter. Right? Like that's the difference between a pass breakup and a completion in a lot of cases. Now, some big arm quarterbacks like Drake may get away with it because they have such velocity on the throw that they can make up for it with velocity. But I think that those types of things, ideally, he would not be doing. You know, the load up or the hitch that he has when he goes into his throw is noticeable.
Just to go back real quick to the tapping the ball, because you just reminded me of this, because I think this is the way some people see it when you talk about, speeding up the release and cutting down on it.
Yeah.
The tap is not extending the release.
No.
Like you said, you're not throwing during that portion of the release anyway because you got to get your hips going first.
Right.
These are things that you're talking about now where
I'm talking about his actual
he's adding steps to the throw.
Yeah.
And it's making the throw take longer. So I think that's why some people are concerned about the tapping the ball.
Yeah.
Honestly, to bring it all together is because they think it's an extra step he's adding. You're not doing anything with the ball in that point in the release anyway, so it doesn't matter. Whereas this stuff with the shoulders, you could just be throwing the ball at that point.
Yeah, I wonder if – so another thing, and I know I keep on bringing up Brady, is not to compare the two of them like career-wise or anything like that, but Brady's the best mechanical thrower I've ever seen. So everything that he did had a purpose to it
Right.
with his mechanics. He, at some point in his career, changed to having his front arm tucked in. So he would bring the ball back, and it would be very efficient, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Drake Maye, when I see him bring the ball back, I see his front hand go up.
It's like a baseball throw.
Yeah, and that's why the motion is like extended, and the shoulders go up like this, right? So if you're able to maybe tuck in the front arm a little bit, like Brady used to do, and he used to put like
He's put a tennis ball,
towel
right?
or a tennis
towel,
ball
yeah.
or something like that to keep his front shoulder.
His left hand would usually end up like on his right shoulder.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
So that's what I see with the shoulder hitch. I think that is legitimate. That needs to be more efficient and cleaned up and be a little bit quicker, because you're right. He is going to have a little bit of a looping, longer release naturally.
I mean, Josh Allen's the same way.
Yeah, so
just to
and
use
Herbert
that comp.
is too.
Yeah.
If you're just really efficient with your upper body though, and everything is kind of level and there's no hitch to it, then he'll speed it up. That will speed it up, and then he has the velocity that it's not going to matter that he might be a little bit slower to the point, to the release point than some other people. The other thing that I would say, and we talked about this a little bit during practice, that I noticed that it depends on who you listen to. Some quarterback coaches don't think it's a big deal. Some quarterback coaches think it's a big deal. What I see with Drake Maye a lot of the time is that he'll tilt his shoulder backwards. So his front shoulder is going to be up backwards, and his lower shoulder, his back shoulder is going to be lower, and you're tilting like on an axis backwards, right? And what happens with that when you do that shoulder tilt is that it puts an upward trajectory on the football. So the ball is just naturally going to have more air under it because of the way that you're throwing. Now, Paul brought up on Tuesday's PU, and I was talking about this, that Drew Brees used to do this.
Yeah.
But Drew Brees used to do it because he was 6 feet tall.
But, so you said you don't remember Brady doing it. I remember Brady. It was on the deep balls, but I remember Brady doing this from time to time.
If he was loading up to throw like a 65, 70-yard bomb to Randy Moss, I'm sure he did it. But what you really don't want to see him do is do it on throws that you don't need him to do that, because you want him to just drive the ball parallel.
So
right?
I feel like that will come, eliminating the shoulders will come with, like you said, flying that front arm out.
Yeah.
Because if you're flying your front arm out, the motion is kind of carrying you that way. If you keep the left arm tucked in, there isn't a ton of reason to lean back.
Yeah, I just feel like he has such a good arm that I don't think he needs the tilt. Right? So, he should be able to keep his shoulders even and just drive the ball.
No,
because
but think
he's
about it.
so big and strong.
If you're flying your left arm out, it's naturally going to push you back a little bit, right?
Yeah, it could.
So maybe, I'm saying, could the two be related?
It could be. I just noticed it on Monday in particular when he would try to throw the ball down the field a little bit more on some of the deeper throws, that he was tilting back a lot. And I don't think the biggest thing is I don't think he needs to do it, because I think he's got enough arm strength to just do it without it. And he's tall, so he's not going to have to worry about batted passes at the line of scrimmage and things like that. The reason why Drew Brees used to do it was to get it over the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
That's why he would do it. Drake Maye is not going to have that problem.
Shouldn't.
At 6'4.5". He's going to be able to just throw the ball. So I would put those two things in the category of needs to be worked on. And I think the biggest thing that I came away from this, just to wrap this whole thing up and put a bow on it, is that I come away from these two exposures to Drake Maye, rookie minicamp and Monday. I'm less concerned now about the footwork and more kind of concerned about his throwing
His
motion.
footwork looks better. His footwork looks like they've made significant progress.
The footwork looks a lot better. I think maybe in the draft evaluation, because I wasn't watching it up close and I was just watching it on film, I don't know if I necessarily noticed how much the motion itself needs to be improved.
I'll say this too. This might be a minor thing, but I noticed it about both rookie quarterbacks. Strong cadence. Those guys come to the line, they get it out.
Yeah.
And that may sound like, no duh, like they're playing quarterback. You'd be surprised how many young quarterbacks, especially with all these college teams now where they go silent count, and I guess they'll get rid of this now, but the plays on the cards, everybody kind of knows what's going on, and you've got the clap cadence and all that.
Yeah.
I've heard of examples where they have to really drill into kids when they get into the league, like what goes into calling out a cadence. Both of these guys, Maye, Milton, they're barking it out. They're out there. They're giving a strong cadence. You can hear it all the way on the other end of the field. It's with purpose. It's with confidence. Don't sleep on that. That's a good sign this early.
Yeah, and a lot of the West Coast coaches are really big on cadence.
Yeah.
Also, having Dak Prescott's okay, here we go, right? Everybody makes fun of it, but there's a lot of West Coast coaches, which is what Mike McCarthy is, and comes from this tree with Van Pelt and everybody. They're really big on cadence, and my guess is that a lot of the quarterbacks behind the scenes, like Jacoby Brissett, Drake Maye, are probably trying to have similar cues and cadences so that it's all the same no matter who's under center. So that's a very, very big thing, I think, for a lot of West Coast coaches.
Well, I would just throw in, too, the McCarthy angle who worked with Rodgers. We know Rodgers uses the cadence as a weapon.
Yeah.
In terms of getting guys to jump off sides.
Right, because with Dak, it's the okay, here we go. Aaron Rodgers, I don't remember what it is, but he has his own one, and so defensive players used to tee off on it, like okay, where the snap's coming, so he used to dummy snap.
Well, so Dak has said this, okay, here we go. When he says that, basically what that means is, because there's other people, the line's communicating, the receivers might be talking. Okay, here we go. When Dak says that, it tells everybody else on the field, from here, I'm talking now. Yeah. You're done with your adjustments. It's on me.
Yeah.
Except there is, I think, a dummy call before it where he can say, okay, here we go, and essentially fake the snap.
Yeah.
Rodgers has a similar thing, too. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they're coaching Drake Maye on, because that's the thing. Some quarterbacks are lazy with the cadence.
Yeah.
They go up, and they're, all right, 22, blah, blah. Yeah. And then they call hike, but it's like, the hut or whatever it is sounds different than everything else. Whereas with a guy like Rodgers, with a guy like Dak, it all sounds the same. It's all said with the same volume, with the same energy, and it makes it that much tougher for the defense to line up. I know this sounds super, super minor. This is as in the weeds as we get, but this stuff can matter, and it's good to see young quarterbacks understanding that. I think with Milton, they use the cadence in certain ways at Tennessee. It's probably a little less of an adjustment for him. But, again, for both these guys come out strong cadence, you hear some things where guys don't always come out of college understanding the importance of that part of the game, and it feels like with Maye and Milton, they've drilled it in easy.
Yeah, it's all this fundamental stuff is why this is why I harp on the reps.
Right.
Because all these this is the time of year to be working on these fundamental things. This is the time of year to start tweaking a little. And the other, I said that we have to be careful of how we assess Drake Maye. I'd also say that the Patriots have to be careful with how much they try to tweak. You have to pick, and this is why I wanted to put things in buckets, of like what's important, what's not. And I'm just giving you my opinion. I'm sure that they have a laundry list of things that they feel like need to be fixed, and I'm, missing a bunch of them. But you have to pick like a handful. You can't try to completely change everything that the kid does.
Right.
You have to try to, because then he's going to become robotic and he's not going to be himself and he's going to feel off and it's not going to work. So you have to pick a few things to try to harp on what he could really fix and what what we should really not be so concerned about. And I think that's important as well. So that's Drake Maye. Before we open up the phone lines and everything, I do also want to talk about the offensive line here briefly. Obviously, we got the news from Gerard Mayo before practice that Cole Strange is month to month, and Ian Rappaport added to that there's some doubt about Cole Strange's availability to start the year, the regular season in September. So this is a big topic of both the whole Cole Strange experience since the minute they drafted him, and Sean McVay and Les Snead were up there laughing at them drafting him on draft night in 2022.
OT Chattanooga to the first round.
Yeah, to today where there's a conversation about just the pick itself, Cole Strange's future, but also obviously what the team is going to look like without him come September. I think the biggest thing is, and I understand that you can't hold this against Elliott Wolf necessarily because he wasn't the one making the final calls in all these situations. And it's not about holding it against anybody, but the Cole Strange pick has had such a giant domino effect on a lot of their decision making when it comes to the draft over the last couple of years.
And to be fair, most first-round picks, one way or another, do have a ton of domino effects. Some can be good, some can be bad.
It's not necessarily that that Layden Robinson is like a bad player, or a bad prospect, or a bad pick in the 4th round. But these assets, it's about the assets, right?
It's who could they have been taking if they weren't chasing their tail at guard.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you really want to go back, it goes back to trading Shaq Mason.
Yeah. I mean, the domino effect of Joe Thuney, Shaq Mason, Ted Karras, creating all of this void by not retaining those players or trading away one of those players, in Shaq Mason's case, opened the door to have to draft Cole Strange. We all knew at the time Cole Strange was a reach and was a risky pick at the time. And it's turned out that for once in a blue moon, sometimes the media is right. The media was right about this one. And
that's going to be the one that pisses people off this week.
And it's not about blaming Elliott Wolf or this regime for the Cole Strange pick in 2022, although they were here. But it's not about blaming them for it. It's just, in revisionist history, the domino effect of, like we said, the asset allocation, they've been chasing their tail is a great way to put it. They've been chasing their tail at guard ever since because he didn't fix the problem.
Right.
So with that all being said, what is Cole Strange's future on the Patriots, I think, is a really interesting question because you can't make the club from the tub.
Right.
And even when he's been out there, he's had some ups and downs. I think he was starting to play a little bit better.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year last year before he got hurt. But in general, I think that one of the other things about Cole Strange that bugs me is people that try to act like Cole Strange is good when he's healthy. Cole Strange has been a inconsistent player even when healthy. You know, some good, some bad, streaky. I would say, you know, has some good film, couple games in a row, then we'll have a stinker, you know, that sort of thing. So I'm still not sold, even on a healthy Cole Strange being a starting guard in the league.
Well, here's what makes it so tough for me is we talked last year about how, when he struggled early, how important the summer would have been for him and how important training camp would have been for him. And he lost that development window. And it felt like he was chasing until you got halfway into the year and suddenly he started playing a little better before he got hurt. He's going to miss this summer, too. He's now going to miss this summer, another development window. Yeah. And now next year he's going to be going into the final year of his contract at age 27, essentially having missed 2 full spring training camps, which stunts a player's growth. It does. It just does. That's what happens. He's undersized, so you worry about his durability from that point. It's just missing 2 training camps is so much bigger than I think people realize, especially for a player like that. And if, you know, there's a real chance that I think we both think City So's a solid player.
Yeah.
Let's say Layden Robinson wins the other spot or at some point takes it over from Nick Leverett or Michael Jordan.
I love that his name is Michael Jordan.
I have to double check myself every time I say it. What are the chances City So and Layden Robinson prove they're both starting caliber guards?
Both?
Yeah.
The odds are not in their favor.
You don't think so?
That both of them are starting caliber?
I'm not saying all pro, but like you feel good about them.
50-50.
I think it's no.
Just by the sheer math of it, like they're both.
All right, let me put it this way: between City So, Layden Robinson, Nick Leverett.
Yeah.
What are the chances that they have? Throw anybody else you want in there, Antonio Mafi. What are the chances that they have 2 guys that we look at it, we get to like October, and it's like, yeah, all right, they're good at guard.
Man, I love is a strong word. I like City So. I think City So is gonna make it. I think he'll be good. I watched some of Leverett in Tampa. When they signed him and a little bit, I actually watched a little bit more yesterday because of all this news that's going on with Cole Strange. His Tampa film is rough.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing that you see with his Tampa film is lateral movement skill. Like he's not very high level pass protector because of his lateral movement, and he's got shorter arms, so he's got some trouble with guys getting into him quickly as well. He's good run blocker. I think I wouldn't call him a great run blocker, but he's solid as a run blocker. He definitely has the play strength to be a decent run blocker. Tampa pulled him a lot. Like they got him on the move a little bit in the run game, and he's got some of that ability certainly. But the pass pro film was pretty rough. I think that he's a third, swing guard, backup type of player.
So then maybe Cole Strange comes back and his job's waiting for him. But if not, I hope Layden Robinson ends up a starter. They took him with the 103rd overall pick. That's high for a guard. Like, there's a chance that they have 2 starting guards and they just don't need Cole Strange. If not, then they're going to keep him around because he has been, serviceable when he plays, and maybe he actually gets into camp next year, bulks up a little bit, gets that development. But his development's so stunted right now from all the time he's missed.
Yeah.
And it's tough to come back from that.
So last week I told everybody that I wasn't that concerned about the offensive line yet. This makes me more concerned because now you're talking about 2 spots. Basically, you're talking about the whole left side.
And really 3.
What's the third one?
The other guard.
Well, I think City's going to be okay there.
All right. Well,
I feel good about David Andrews, City, and Onwenu being starting caliber linemen for them.
So
whatever the configuration is, but I feel good about those 3. If I almost wonder, and I think they did this on Monday, right? I almost wonder if it's better to play City at left guard and put Leverett in between Andrews and Onwenu. So
that's what they did. That's what they should do.
Right, because you're kind of spacing out. If your whole left side's a turnstile, then that's a big problem.
And here's what worries me. So your whole take last week was you believe in Scott Peters, and that's why you felt good about it. And I'm not knocking.
And I'm a big believer in if it's one spot, you can cover up one spot. Yeah.
But I look at it. You have at left tackle, you're either going to have a converted right tackle, whether it's Chooks or Wallace.
It's going to be Chooks.
Or you're going to have but just the guys they put out there, right? You have Okorafor and Wallace, who are converted right tackles, or Vidarian Lowe, who is a left tackle but is a project player in his own regard.
Yeah.
You are going to have a left guard who is moving from playing right guard last year. And he played left guard in college, but the point is like new position, new assignments. Your center's David Andrews, you're fine there. You're going to have a right guard that is probably a rookie or a second-year player who didn't play a ton last year, like a project player there.
Or a career backup.
Right.
Everett.
And then your right tackle, who is a good player, this is his first offseason working exclusively at right tackle. So there's a different sort of training there. So if you look at it, there's development needed, like true hands-on development needed at 4 of the 5 spots.
We're starting to play Jenga here a little bit.
They are asking a ton of Scott Peters and this offensive line coaching staff. And they actually have a bunch of offensive line coaches, which maybe is part of the reason they're comfortable doing it.
The assistant.
Don't they have a third, too? I'm trying to pull it up here.
The whole staff.
No, they said Michael McCarthy, the guy they signed from Brown, who's like he's listed as an offensive assistant, but he's been a line coach his whole career.
Yeah, that's his background.
So they have a lot of guys there, but we'll see, and maybe I'm not saying they're not up for it. I'm not even saying they're not good coaches, but they're asking that offensive coaching, specifically the offensive line coaches, to do a lot.
We're starting to get into the territory now where I was at like a 3 last week. Now when you start to really break it down, and I don't think that even though it's super early for him in this transition, I didn't feel a whole lot of confidence coming from Chooks Okorafor post practice on Monday either about him playing left tackle. He seemed like, this is gonna be a test. Like this is gonna be a little.
He didn't sound super confident.
No. So I feel like we're starting to teeter a little bit even for me now. Like I'm up to probably like a 6 or a 7 on the concern scale. Like this like doubled my level of concern. Not because of how high I've been clear that I'm not as super high on Cole Strange as a player, but it's just like you said, we're moving pieces around now. You have younger players playing that don't have a ton of experience. You're just starting to really shuffle the deck a lot, which is I think the bigger concern. I will continue to pound the table for Mike Onwenu playing guard.
That doesn't help you.
Yes, it does, because it puts people in natural positions.
And then who's your right tackle?
Wallace.
All right. But now the line is a whole.
Left to right, Chooks, City, Andrews, Onwenu, Wallace. Everybody's playing their natural spots. City was a left guard in college. I know he's got to learn it at this level and played right guard last year, but he was a left guard in college. I think that's really where he feels more natural anyways. And I keep saying it. You develop that line, and then next year at the top of the draft, you draft Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks Jr., and he's your left tackle.
Man, I just wish they drafted a left tackle.
Yeah, it would have expedited things, but once you get into the third round at 68, when you really start to think about it, if you have a much higher grade on Caden Wallace, then you should have taken Caden Wallace.
They should trade it up. They should have. Patrick Paul goes 55. There's a run coming.
That's fair. That's fair. It's a totally fair second guess of how they handled it.
Yeah.
I just think that,
like, don't get me wrong, Caden
point,
Wallace was the best offensive lineman on the board at 68. I just don't love that they picked at 68.
Yeah, I just feel like at this point, you have to almost cut your losses and just make the best out of the situation. I think the way to make the best out of the situation is to at least go into the season with everybody playing a position they feel comfortable with playing. And I also have been pretty surprised that Onwenu doesn't look slimmed down or lighter or any sort of like preparation for him to play. He looks the same as he always does in terms of like being that, blocky guard build. I just feel like that's not only do I think that probably has the highest ceiling in terms of the line this year, but I also think that is the best line that you can have for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And when we start talking about Drake Maye and his window on the rookie contract and all that, like I feel like that's the best thing. And if you have the quarterback on the rookie contract, you can afford to pay a guard $18-19 million a year like they're paying Mike Onwenu. Like you can afford that at this point in time.
Right.
You have $50 million in cap space still on May 23rd. So money is not an issue about asset allocation and stuff like that. We'll see what they end up doing. It's right now we're starting to get on mess territory with the offensive line. We're starting to get there.
I mean, you can say we're starting to get there.
We're starting to get there.
I've been there.
We're starting to get there. All right, let's take some of these calls, and then we have a few more things I wanted to get to on OTAs. But Patrick is in Pennsylvania. What's up, Patrick?
Hey, love Catch-22. Keep up the great work. And before I say my question, I 100% agree with you, Evan. I think it goes Chuk, City, Andrews, Onwenu, Wallace. Put everybody in the right position. But my actual question is, aside from maybe some of the offensive line and running back depth, looking at defense, outside of outside corner, is there any other greater team need than that at this point? I see a bunch of slot corners on the roster, not a lot of true outside guys, or at least proven guys. Do you realistically see us addressing that with a veteran, whether that be Gilmore or somebody else? Or have you seen enough from practice to roll with Gonzo and Jonathan Jones at the outside, and then a mix of Marcus Jones, Dial, Bolden, Austin, etc. at the inside? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Patrick. I'm not – maybe this is me being naive like I was with left tackle last week. I'm not necessarily concerned with outside corner or cornerback.
I'd say it's the other way around. I think they have more boundary corners and slot corners. You got Christian Gonzalez. You got Alex Austin. You've got Marco Wilson, right, can play on the boundary. I like this guy, Mikey Victor, the UDFA they picked up. Jonathan Jones can play on the boundary. Marcellus Dial's a boundary corner. Like, you got guys there. It's the slot
Zay
to me.
Bolden, did you say so?
I did not say Isaiah Bolden, but thank you. I'd put him in that group too. It's the slot that worries me more. Maybe Jonathan Jones goes back in the slot, and I guess that's my Mike Onwenu at right guard.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's a slightly less impactful position, but I just think the puzzle fits better if you do that. But if it's not him, I think Marcus Jones can be a good slot corner, but he's a small guy. Durability is going to be a question. And then after that, it really drops off in the slot. Sean Wade has shown some progress, but is he a guy you're really comfortable with being potentially your second slot corner? I think Caleb Ford-Dement, the UDFA, can play in the slot a little bit, but it really thins out. That, to me, is now they could add a guy on the boundary, move John Jones back into the slot full time. You add Steph Gilmore, and now you're in good shape. So that's right at the veteran. The slot's where they're actually thinner, I think.
So I guess maybe it's semantics, but I don't really get caught up too much in inside outside right now when it comes to corners, because so many of these receivers travel in and out.
Sure.
So when you play Miami, does it really make a difference if you have inside or outside guys? Like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are going to line up all over the formation.
I think it's more at this point using those to describe the prototype of the player, the skill set, rather than the alignment.
I hear you there. I just think that the way I look at it, and I think that, again, this is probably pretty semantics, but Gonzo's going to take the top X receiver.
Yes.
Right? So he's going to take the top X receiver. Jonathan Jones is going to take the top Z receiver. And in today's NFL, this is probably true always. It's just I only know today's NFL. The Z receiver travels, right? Like he's an off the line player for a reason. He's going to be moving around. He's going to play inside. He's going to play outside. He's going to play out of stacks, bunch alignments. He's going to come in motion. That's why he's playing off the line of scrimmage, so that he can be a chess piece that they can move around. So in my mind, I actually think Jonathan Jones is excellent for that role. Now, if they play a team with a great Z receiver, somebody that plays that role that is excellent at it, maybe Gonzo takes that player that week. And then you start to get into the issues of, okay, well, now who plays the boundary, permanently and all that. I get that maybe you could get into that minutia. But to me, it's simple as Gonzo's going to play the boundary. Jonathan Jones is going to be the Z shadow, right? He's going to run around with whoever's off the line of scrimmage. And then, like you said, the true slot is really the next trickle down. And I think that ideally it's Marcus Jones. Like,
right.
Ideally he steps up.
And I think he can do it, but he's got to be healthy. And then who do you have behind him? Because right now it's Sean Wade, and now you're starting to get into, being a little thick.
Yeah, I think the one spot that I look at too is early downs. First, second down. I think there's a really good chance that they're 3 safety nickel a lot. And you have like a slot defender instead of a corner, and it's Jabril Peppers or it's Kyle Duggar, or someone like that.
Yeah, but I hope they don't stick, because we've seen them do that in the past, overdo that, and they end up putting just guys that are too slow on burners.
Yeah, if it ends up being, you're playing a team that ends up just countering with 11 personnel,
right,
then you have to match it with true nickel. But I think that a lot of these teams that they play against that are going to be a little run heavy on early downs or play action run heavy, like that's going to be the sequence in their offense. Or maybe the game plan that week is to play just a bunch of zone because they just feel like that's how they match up best against an opponent. I feel like that 3 safety nickel comes into play a lot. So I think that maybe that adds a little bit of depth to corner or slot corner, I should say, just because the safeties factor in just a little bit into how that's going to work out. If you ask me, the spot on the defense that I feel is maybe the most vulnerable, I guess is the way to put it, is edge rusher.
You only feel that way because they had nobody out there at practice the other
maybe
day.
I just feel like it's the same as last year, though, where if Judon gets hurt, like who's...
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, if you lose your best player, the defense is going to get worse.
We're talking about depth, and that's how depth works. Like it's also not just about him getting hurt. If they have any plans of winning some games this year, then the Judon trade to me is off the table. Like you can't, if you trade Judon, I don't know where you're getting the pass rush from. And it's
supposed to be Josh Uche.
Yeah, but he's a situational guy. Yeah. Like I'm talking about 3 downs, and I know they have Barmore in the middle.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about from the outside. Like where does the pass rush come from? And this kind of goes to the Keon White point that I had written down as something I wanted to talk to as well. I just don't know where the pass rush on first down comes from outside of obviously the interior with Barmore. If Judon's not on this football team, like where it's not going to come from Jennings.
Yeah.
Uche is not going to be on the field because he's not his situation. Unless they really change what they do from a front mechanic standpoint, which I don't think they're going to do. And in terms of pure pass rush, I'm still not 100% sold that's Keon White's MO. Like
he was pretty good at that last year before he got that concussion.
I feel like
he closed.
But I feel like
strong.
he's a disruptor, right? And there's a difference between being a disruptor and what Judon is. Judon's a sack artist.
Yeah, but they've gotten by for years with disruptors.
I guess I don't know. I feel.
I don't think you need. Spot. I don't think you need 2 15 sack guys necessarily to be.
No, it's more just, kind of thinking about it without Judon. Like if Judon is traded or Judon gets hurt again or whatever the case may be, I think you're back into a world, which is where I think they were last year, where the pressure has to be schemed. It has to be, simulated pressures, creepers, blitzes, whatever.
Well, the other thing I wish they, and this goes back to my thing about the deep safety. Remember his rookie year, they used to use Kyle Duggar's pass rusher. He was pretty good at it.
They could try to do that again.
I would, but then the problem is, all right, so now you've got to put Jabril Peppers on the back end where he's not as impactful as when he's playing near the line of scrimmage. I hate they don't have real free safety.
All right. Z is in Springfield. What's up, Z?
Hi, how you guys doing? Do you think they should trade a first and a fourth for T. Higgins?
Okay, thanks for the call. No, I would not trade a first-round pick for T. Higgins. And it's not because I don't think that T. Higgins could net a first-round pick. The Patriots' first-round pick is going to be a top 10 pick next year.
Yeah.
I don't think T. Higgins is worth the 8th overall pick in the draft. I just don't. Now, there's a line, right? Like there's certain players that I do think are worth. Obviously, I don't. This is I'm not saying it's happening by any means, but like Justin Jefferson is worth the 8th overall pick in the draft. I don't think T. Higgins is there. I don't think Brandon Ayuk is there either. I think the starting point for the Patriots on a T. Higgins trade is their 2025 second-round pick and maybe the 4th-round pick that he mentioned or something like that. But I can't part with a top 10 pick in the draft for T. Higgins.
Yeah, I'm not giving up a 1st-round pick because of where that pick could be. 2nd and 4th, absolutely, I'd go out and get T. Higgins because this whole thing looks so much more complete if you do that. But I'm not giving up a 1st-round pick for him.
My other take on the T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, all that, we all would love to have those guys on the Patriots team. Like you said, the whole thing looks a whole lot better. I do wonder if they're maybe a year away from that move because I think in some respects we don't know when Drake Maye is going to play. And as much as T. Higgins will help Drake Maye in 2 years anyways, it's just a matter of when, like that sort of thing happens.
That's fair. I don't know that you need to be in the biggest rush to do it, especially when you look at the guys that are up next
and
offseason.
Especially because they have no intentions whatsoever of re-signing him in Cincinnati. So, like, why pay?
Yeah, but he's not going to hit the market. He's going to get traded before he gets.
Maybe. I mean, he's not. He's going to have to sign the tag, and then he's going to have to get traded on the tag. Like, it's a complicated. That becomes complicated.
These guys just don't hit free agency. I guess I'll believe it when I see it.
I don't necessarily think he's going to hit free agency either. I just think it's a little bit more of a complex situation than that. I look at it this year. I don't know if Drake Maye is going to be ready to play right away. T. Higgins with Jacoby Brissett, really, like all that does for you is maybe give you 1 or 2 more wins, which puts your draft pick in a worse spot. And I also think that you got to see at receiver what Jalen Polk and Javon Baker have,
That's true.
And I'd also throw Pop Douglas in there too. I always go back to the Green Bay comparison. If in a year from now, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, and Pop Douglas look like Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed, then a player like T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk is like the cherry on top that maybe makes you like ridiculously good on offense, right?
The trade, the idea of like a 2nd and a 4th for one of these top receivers, which seems to be about what it costs, that should be on the table. If it's not T. Higgins right now, like I'm okay with that, but you look at the list of guys that are going to be up next year. I think Terry McLaurin got an extension, right?
He did recently. I don't know if it was this past offseason or 2 offseasons ago.
DK Metcalf's the big one for me. Like DK Metcalf with Drake Maye would be, talk about fit. Terry McLaurin, if I'm thinking the extension is going to be up. DJ Moore, if they move on from him because they got a bunch of good receivers there, is going to be up. I don't think they're getting Garrett Wilson, but like Jalen Waddle because they're in the division. But like, there's a lot of good receivers that are going to be that like pending free agent trade candidate guy next year. So that trade should be on the table. If it's not T. Higgins right now, to your point, I understand that, maybe they want to see what they have this year, and if Drake May's not going to be playing anyway, you don't have to rush into it. But when we get to the spring, of 2025, I think that becomes, guys like DK Metcalf, that should become a real conversation.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I just look at it, and I look at this year, the 2024 season, as year 0. This is not. I don't even look at this as year 1.
No, it is. Year 0 is the year that you're so bad you get the draft pick.
To me, this is year 0.
Nah, it's year 1. It's it's the quarterback's first year. It's year 1. That's because you time it up.
He might not even play.
But you time it up to the rookie contract. That's just how it works.
Year 0 to me.
No, okay.
This is a full-on developmental season.
It can be year 0 to you. I'm telling you, having talked to people, the way that this thing goes, it's considered year 1.
Okay, well, I disagree with that.
If
you drafted a quarterback that was ready to play right out of the gate, if it was Mac Jones 2.0 or if it was, Jaden Daniels, who I think will be probably ready to play right away for Washington, then I would agree that this is year 1. But since you're probably going to plan on sitting Drake Maye for at least 6 to 8 weeks,
but you have to time it to his rookie contract. It's not.
I'm not
like
necessarily
baseball
talking about
where the contract holds.
I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm just talking about the developmental cycle of the entire team. And I look at right now that I would like to see what the young receivers have before I start paying T. Higgins $25 million a year.
What I'm telling you is they went to the double box in the video. That's how you know it's getting good. What I'm telling you is
about something.
The way it's generally looked at.
Yeah.
Year 0 is the year you're bad, right?
But why do I care how it's generally looked at?
Because I'm educating the audience. Because this is what the timeline should be for drafting quarterback. This is how it should work. Year 1, is the quarterback a guy you're moving forwards with, yes or no?
I don't know if we're going to have that answer because he might not play.
Well, then they'll be behind schedule. But you can
I don't think they'll be behind. That
but you
doesn't
can
mean
find
they're
that out behind
were
the
the
scenes.
Chiefs behind schedule? Like, I don't think that means he's there
No,
necessarily.
but they clearly knew. We didn't see it because he wasn't playing in games. They moved on from Alex Smith. They were comfortable. They knew that Mahomes was the guy. So just because he doesn't play in games doesn't mean you don't know what you have in him.
At some point, though.
At some point, he has to play in the game. At some point, he does.
And he's got to have, like, not saying that the Chiefs got lucky by any means, but, like, that technically could have gone either way still until he got into an NFL game. Now, he played that last regular season game, and he was good.
So, and you're saying Drake Maye might play 6 to 8. Drake Maye's playing this year. I don't think they're going to go 17
I agree
weeks.
with
So,
that.
year 1 is, let me put it this way. If Drake Maye is if let's say worst case scenario, like he gets out there and like this guy's not close, then you're not trading for DK Metcalf next year because you don't know. Because then if you trade for DK Metcalf
trade, which happened in between year 2 and 3 for
right,
Josh Allen.
exactly. If you're not confident in Drake Maye and you trade for DK Metcalf, you blew that asset when you might have to be picking another quarterback again in a year or two, and now DK Metcalf's old and he's out of his prime and whatever. So that's kind of my point. Year 1, is your quarterback the guy, yes or no? Have you checked the first box in the rebuild category? Year 2, can you just be competitive? Can you maybe surprise in a couple of games? Are you flirting with a playoff spot? Year 3, this is when you should have that receiver in place. You should go and get that. All these quarterbacks going into year 3,
man.
right?
I think you gotta speed it up a little bit.
Year 3 is when you should really be like, you should be in the playoffs. You should be contending for your division. Years 4 and year 5, that's your Super Bowl window. That's your true Super Bowl window. That is what the path should be for developing a young quarterback. With Mac Jones, they were ahead of schedule. They made the playoffs year 1.
Well, they peaked.
Well, exactly. They got ahead of schedule. Well, I think they got ahead of schedule and got a little too comfortable.
They peaked.
So let's just figure out this. If they come away from this year, and it can happen behind the scenes, Evan, we may not know it.
Uh-huh.
If they can come away from this year that, yes, we're going to invest in Drake Maye, we're going to build this thing around Drake Maye, then this year's a success. Then you go out and get DK Metcalf. Then you go out and you get your left tackle in the draft. And now you're starting on that upward trajectory of, okay, we know we have the guy. Now we've put the pieces around him. Let's see what that looks like. Year 3, you finish rounding out the roster. And then year 4 and year 5, you're going for it.
If they don't make the playoffs by year 3, I don't know if Gerard Mayo.
If you don't, year 3, you should be in the playoffs. Yeah. I don't know if I was clear about that. I would say you should be contending for your division, but you should be in the playoffs.
But if I just think that history tells us, and maybe the Crafts will be more patient, but history tells us that it's really a 2-year window that you have to get the team.
If you're
competitive.
and I'm with you on that, and this timeline exists in that context.
Yeah.
If you're not in the playoffs in year 3, you are behind schedule.
Yeah. I think that you start talking about people's jobs at that point. I think the other thing that
year 2, you should be like a borderline playoff team. Like maybe you sneak in.
Wild card team.
What the Patriots were Mac Jones' rookie year is really what you want to be in year 2.
So we have 2 different models to kind of look at here. I think number 1 is what's going on right now with the Houston Texans. So the Houston Texans
are way ahead of schedule.
They're way ahead of schedule because of Stroud. But what they did was what I'm advocating for the Patriots to do this year is they allowed Stroud to play with Nico Collins and Tank Dell.
Yeah.
They realized that Nico Collins and Tank Dell are dudes, and then they made the Stephon Diggs trade.
Yes. Okay.
To be the icing.
I'm with you on that. And look, all right. I'm with you on that.
The other model is the Buffalo Bills, who I believe it was between going into Josh Allen's 3rd season that they traded for Diggs.
Yeah.
Because they recognized that he needed some development, and he wasn't ready yet for that type of move.
Well, whether he needs development or not, you should be trying to get him one of those wide receivers.
I think it matters. I think once you got into year 2 with Josh Allen, he showed some significant improvement.
Hang on.
He started to play well, and then they recognized, to your point of, is he the guy or not? I don't think the Bills truly knew that Josh Allen was the guy or not until the end of his 2nd season.
Right. So
that's my point. That's my point of why I like Josh Allen's rookie year. If they had made a snap, like your point of, can this guy hang? Can this guy be your quarterback? If they had made a judgment in a vacuum based off of Josh Allen's rookie season, the answer would have been no.
So I'm not saying you have to decide, is he the guy, yes or no, after the first year. I'm saying, are you confident enough after the first year? Like, you want to be confident enough after the first year. So they made the Diggs trade going into year 3, right? Because I think they were behind. At one point, Josh Allen was behind schedule. The Bills were behind schedule. I think you'd agree with me on that. Because they didn't know after the first year.
I don't think they were behind schedule. I think that they knew that they drafted like this raw developmental quarterback.
Sure. Okay, but here's my point. Can you see enough from Drake Maye where you're confident to make that trade going into year 2 instead of going into year 3? That's basically my point.
That's what happened with Stroud.
Right.
That's
Well,
why I gave
so they both
examples.
Well, but again, because Josh Allen didn't check that first box until after year 2, where you're kind of hoping to check it after year 1, where it's just
the reason why Josh Allen didn't check it, though, and this is what I'm trying to get at, is because they knew going in that he had longer way to go than C.J. Stroud did. So
so they
that's
weren't
that's the guy that
confident.
Patriots drafted.
So
they drafted a guy that is Josh Allen. They didn't draft C.J.
So
Stroud.
you think there's a chance that we're not confident after this year that Drake Maye is the future?
I think that there's a chance after this year that it's incomplete, that we just don't know yet.
Okay. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I don't but it's not like you're saying it to me like you're saying it with a negative connotation. I don't necessarily think that means it's a negative thing. I just think that when you look at developmental tracks, like it's going to take Drake Maye potentially longer to hit his ceiling than it took C.J. Stroud. And so
but he doesn't need to hit his ceiling in order for you to feel good about him.
You know what I mean? Like hit his a potential that you can feel good about.
Does he show you enough? Here's what I'm saying. Can he show you enough this year where you say, yeah, we're okay trading a second-round pick for DK Metcalf because Drake Maye is going to be here being the guy throwing to him?
Right, which means that he would have to have a season not necessarily as good because Stroud just had one of the best.
No, he doesn't have to match Stroud. Look,
but he's got to be in the ballpark of somebody like C.J. Stroud.
Let me say this. I felt after Mac Jones' rookie year that, yeah, this is a guy I'd go get help.
Yes.
I'm okay kind of blowing some future assets to
Mac
get this
Jones
guy
had
help.
a solid rookie year, though.
I think Drake Maye could do that.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
If he's given the opportunity.
I don't think they're going to give him the opportunity necessarily. But
well, and then it goes back to, can he show them enough behind the scenes where they're watching him in practice and saying, man, if we go get him a DK, and I keep using DK Metcalf just because his contract's up.
Yeah.
Man, if we go get him a DK
Higgins,
Metcalf,
Brandon
a
Ayuk,
T. Higgins,
whatever.
right, whoever, like he's really going to be able to do something.
Yeah, I hear you. And I also think there's a conversation that we can unpack at another day when we decide whether or not they're ready for this trade of the best stylistic fit for this type of offense and Drake Maye and all that kind of stuff. I hear what you're saying with DK. The downfield ability is definitely there. I do wonder if like a more versatile player just for the system that they're going to be running.
Well, but isn't the hope that Jalen Polk is that guy?
Yeah, I could see
I'm not
that.
talking about I'm talking about with Metcalf. It's not
right.
just fitting the system; it's fitting the players they have in place. Because Polk is your Z, Pop is your slot. So can you go get that true outside guy?
I just wonder in this system if there really is a true outside guy. Like if that's really how it's built. Like I look at
so you want like another Z.
Well, it's not even just about like the position names. I just think that like you look at the receivers in San Francisco, the receivers in Los Angeles with the Rams, like those guys are, Ayuk, Puka, Cooper Kupp. Like they're these versatile guys that can play different spots, that can be inside, that can be outside, that can block in the run game. I know nobody cares about that here, but that's just the bottom line. They're bigger, thicker receivers as well. I look at DK. I love DK, so I would put him out of it in a different category. I think he's elite, and that means that he's one of those guys that you just make it work. That type of player. I look at T. Higgins, though, and I have a minor bit of hesitation.
He's more that true. He's less versatile.
Yeah.
By the way,
he's a fade, jump ball, big body receiver. Like, that's what he is.
By the way, instead of just continuing to guess, because we have the power of the internet, Terry McLaurin, because McLaurin would be that kind of guy, that kind of multiple,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
So he's signed through 2025 with a void year in 26, but he has no guaranteed money on his contract next year. So he's a guy I would think, unless he gets a new, he's going to need a new contract one way or the other. Whether Washington gives it to him or not is the question, but he's probably going to be looking for a new contract next offseason. So that, in theory, means he could be available.
I think Scary Terry's a great player.
You love Terry McLaurin. You're a big Terry
I'm a big Terry McLaurin guy.
He should have been, for all we want to second guess about.
But why are the Commanders giving, like, Jaden Daniels is in the same spot that Drake Maye is in. Why would the Commanders be giving up receiver talent with a young quarterback?
Because I'm like kind of with you, but also I wonder, McLaurin's going to be 30. Do they see it as we're going to draft a guy so these two can develop together? And maybe the Patriots, they've drafted the guys.
So they have, it's what, Jahan Dotson there. It's Terry McLaurin. I think there's a third guy. No, it was Curtis Samuel, who I think is gone now, right? He's in Buffalo.
I'm pulling it up. But they may look at it and say, we want to draft a guy for Jaden Daniels to develop with, where the Patriots look at it and say, we got 2 guys for him to develop with, but we need a veteran in that room as well. I'm just thinking, it's they got De'Ami Brown, Drake Maye's former team. I think Drake Maye's former team.
Maybe for like a year, yeah.
No, he wasn't. He was out in 2020. They have Demir Bird.
Okay.
One of the most underrated players in the league.
Who are their real receivers?
Jamison Crowder, Jahan Dotson. They drafted Luke McCaffrey, Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, that's a scary room.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
That's a scary room if you take Terry McLaurin out. Like, Jahan Dotson is still an unknown to me. Like, I think he's probably going to be.
Well, but Evan, this is next year, so it's if you know you're getting a top 40 pick, and then we're going to draft a guy, and
I don't know. If I'm them, Jaden Daniels is ready. Like, he's 24
maybe
years old.
I'm talking myself into it, but
he's a good player. I wouldn't worry about it. All right. I know where you're going to be at Memorial Day weekend, Alex, I think.
At the beach.
Yeah, Memorial Day weekend means that summer is upon us, and you can dress your home to the nines with summer of $9.99 from Bob's Discount Furniture. Shop tons of styles for every room, like Bob's best-selling mattresses, super relaxing reclining sofas, barbecue-ready dining sets, and warm weather outdoor styles, all for $999 or less. So stop in and stock up for summer at Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. And
might need to look into some of that outdoor furniture.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you?
Yeah.
For where?
Gift for my parents.
Oh, okay. That's nice. That's nice.
I have to look into.
Yeah. Have you ever given them, like, we gave my parents, like, the towels, like the nice, like, towels, and they got, like, their initials stitched into them and stuff like that? No. Is it like the stupid things, like, what do your parents need for, like, their birthdays or anniversaries?
Right, yeah.
Like they got plenty. So it's like, what do you give them? You give them stupid stuff for their second homes.
Right.
We're spoiled. Anyways, let's take some more of these calls and emails, and then we'll get to the last couple things on my list. So if you want to call in, it's 855-PATS-500 is the phone number, and webradio@patriots.com is the email address. And Eldred's called in, I'm sure, to talk about our receiver conversation. What's up, Eldred?
Hey, fellas. How y'all doing?
Hey. Good.
Oh, good. Like your insight, Evan, on a lot of things, but I don't know. The comparison between what Stroud did last year and Maye is like apples to oranges, because Stroud was the better passer, and championship-wise, whatever. But I do agree with you, though. They need to give him more reps, a lot more reps than Bailey Zappi. If him and the other quarterback is split, it'd been fine. It'd be fine. But DK Metcalf, I want him in 2019, but we got Harry. So, but next year I'll shoot for him. I'm like Alex over there. I'll shoot for him. Next year, not the third year, the second year, if Drake Maye is the man. So my other question is, why everybody is ain't nobody trying to put Milton into the picture or anything, because he got the same thing he can work on to like Drake Maye, the short, accurate, medium, distance throws and all that, But they put one down but praise the other one, like he can make all the throws. But both of them can, but they just ain't doing it equal enough or dedicated enough. You know what I mean? Right on point wise.
Yeah. I think it's a fair point, Eldred, and thanks for the call as always. Of what's the difference, I guess, between Drake Maye and Joe Milton? Why did one go in the first round, one go in the sixth round? Why, to Eldred's point, I actually think that a lot of people aren't writing off Joe Milton. I wish more people were writing off Joe Milton, but I think the biggest thing that you look at with those two guys is how they read the field. I think that Joe Milton in college, and we talked about this a little bit, Alex, is in the past, he's one of those guys, and I don't mean to be mean, but like, when you're playing Madden and the controller comes unplugged and like he's just kind of frozen there in the pocket, and you're just like waiting, and you're just like, oh, trying to plug it back in and hit the button. Like that's what happens to Joe Milton a lot. He kind of becomes like a statue he just kind of freezes up in the pocket, and I don't think his timing or his rhythm in the passing game is anywhere near as good as Drake Maye's was at North Carolina. And so really when you talk about Joe Milton, you're really just talking about the raw arm talent with him. Whereas I think Drake Maye has a lot of raw tools and intangible, physical tools, but I also think that he's a little bit more of a natural quarterback, if that makes sense, like a more natural playmaker at the position. Whereas right now, I think Joe Milton's truly just a ball of clay. He's a big dude that's athletic, that throws the ball a mile. Like I think that's what he is. Whereas I think Drake Maye has true quarterback instincts and ability to read the field and timing and all that kind of stuff.
I think Joe Milton has those things. He just doesn't display them as what's the word I'm looking for? Consistently?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just forgot that. I use that word all the time. I think that's the difference. The other difference is where you try to look at which way the players are trending. And Joe Milton was in college for 6 years and is kind of still the same player he was when he was a freshman at Michigan, and he's older now. He's going to be 25, right? So there's less runway there. Whereas Drake Maye's 21, he's got more room to grow. So I think that's really the difference is one guy has a lot more time to improve, the other one doesn't. And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Some people I talked to, I wrote both of these guys' profiles. So
yeah,
a lot of the guys that I talked to for Drake Maye said what you just said, which is that if you, on top of the fact that he lost his senior year of high school because of COVID, he really hasn't played a whole lot of football. He's only 21 years old, 22 years old, and he's only started, I think it's 4 seasons between high school and college. He started 2 years in high school, then sophomore and junior year. COVID wipes out his senior year, and then he goes on to North Carolina where he sits behind Sam Howell for a season and then starts at North Carolina as a sophomore and a junior. So he's only started 4 actual seasons of football. He hasn't played a ton. Is already at this level. So that tells you that he's got a very, very high ceiling, right, as we know. Joe Milton, I think the one pushback that people had about it is that there was a lot of just added circumstance that led to him having trouble sticking in a program. Michigan, in 2020, the COVID-shortened season, they played 6 games. He started 5 of them, and he wasn't great. And they decided to go in a different direction. But when you look at his skill set and the way he plays and what he's good at, like, is Joe Milton really a Jim Harbaugh quarterback? Like, is he really one of those guys
No.
Like, Jim Harbaugh is like J.J. McCarthy, right?
Right. No. Jim Harbaugh's offense doesn't require throwing the ball more than 10 yards down the field. Right. That's all Joe Milton wants to do.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a great stylistic fit to begin with Joe Milton, who wants to, with Joe Milton, you play like an offense like Tennessee. It's spread, it's tempo, it's down the field throws. Like, that's what you want to do with Joe Milton. Michigan's under center, smash mouth football, old school offense was not a great stylistic fit. So I never really understood that to begin with. And so then he goes to Michigan, sits behind some guys for like a year or two there.
Or goes Tennessee.
No, goes to Michigan. I'm going.
Oh, okay.
Start there. Wins the job in 2020. Yeah. Starts for 5 games in 2020, and then transfers, right? Because it wasn't working out.
Yeah, it wasn't a fit. And
so he transfers to Tennessee, wins the starting job at Tennessee, gets hurt. Hendon Hooker takes the job from him and doesn't look back. Doesn't let go of the reins until Hendon Hooker goes to the NFL. So that lost another 2 years of development for Joe Milton.
Right.
So his final year, 6 years later, he's throwing passes to guys that have been in the NFL for like 4 years already in 2020 or whatever, and now he's just.
I think he was throwing balls to Juwan Jennings, right?
Yeah, getting a shot in 2024 or 2023, excuse me, at Tennessee. Like that. So it wasn't necessarily, yes, you could make the argument that he wasn't good enough to like really take the reins of the position and take the bull by the horns and keep it and maintain it. But I think that he was an odd stylistic fit at Michigan. He gets hurt, tweaks his ankle, and then Hendon Hooker comes in and has like the best season ever for a Tennessee quarterback. It's like, what are you supposed to do? So I think that there's a lot of those types of contextual things that people push back on with Milton and said, just keep in mind that even though he was in college for 6 years and it seems like he's tapped out, he hasn't played a ton.
Right.
So, maybe there is some potential there with Joe Milton. So I just talked up Joe Milton for you. There you go.
I don't think anybody, like, there's very few people who are being realistic about Joe Milton.
I agree with that.
And it's hard to, in both directions.
Yeah.
In both directions. There's people saying he doesn't belong in the league. He does. He belongs in the NFL. Absolutely belongs in the NFL.
That arm belongs in the NFL.
Yeah. But
we'll see if the rest of it comes along.
But there's also people who see, a couple of clips from OTAs and wonder if he's pushing Drake Maye, and I don't think that's the case either. College football, so this is where the college football thing comes in. There's a whole thing among college football fans the last couple of years about the Joe Milton experience.
Yeah.
And most college football fans kind of figured out by the end what the deal is with Joe Milton. Watching Patriots fans experience the Joe Milton experience in real time is going to be very interesting.
It's crazy. We see it at practice, like against air.
Yeah.
We've seen it throw to throw. Like he made an absolutely beautiful, they were just throwing against air, routes against air, and beginning of practice on Monday. And he threw a beautiful deep ball, not the one that he threw to the coach. I'm talking like to an actual receiver. Then they changed sides, so he goes from throwing down the right sideline to throw down the left sideline. The throw down the left sideline was like 10 yards out of bounds. Like he just like threw overthrew the receiver by a mile, and I'm like, well, that's Joe. Like one is an absolute dime. Like couldn't throw it any more perfect, and then the next throw is just nowhere close. And that's sort of what you mean by the Joe Milton experience. David from San Jose asks, would you extend Matthew Judon or Ramondre Stevenson first? Like which guy would you prioritize?
Judon, because he's not. I don't think he's going to play on his current deal.
I'm with you. I would extend Judon as well. I also, me, where I'm going with this. Running back, second contract running backs is not for me.
I'm not against bringing Ramondre back.
If it's reasonable, and I'm never against it.
I'm not. I want to see Antonio Gibson. I think Antonio Gibson could be like
sneaky,
really good. And if Gibson's a player, you don't. So I wouldn't extend Stevenson before the season. I just wouldn't. It doesn't mean I'm against bringing him back, but I don't think he's a guy that needs an extension right now. Judon needs an extension right now.
Yeah, so I read a stat the other day that I didn't realize, and this is a little bit of a nerd stat for you. Antonio Gibson last year led the league, all running backs, in missed tackles forced per rush. So his elusiveness, right?
I'll take that stat. That's a tangible stat.
Elusiveness.
Was there like a minimum carries on that?
I think so. I don't know. Somebody just tweeted it out randomly. Elusiveness. Speed, versatility.
He's big too.
I'm talking myself into it a little bit, being a sneaky good signing for them. I wonder if
he only had 65 carries last year.
Is there a world though where he is closer?
Actually, was it per carry or per touch?
Per carry, I think.
Okay, because he only had 68 carries, but he caught 48 passes.
Is there a world where he's closer to 2 years ago that he had the big year in Washington?
21. Yeah, 21. He ran in 16 games, ran for 1,037 yards, 7 touchdowns, caught 42 passes for another 300 yards and 3 scores.
I'm not sure he's going to have the opportunity.
He's not going to get that kind of volume.
But is there a chance that he's, in terms of efficiency and all that kind of stuff, is like more on par with that player than the one that got buried last year?
Absolutely. And look, one change I'm hoping from, with this new offensive coaching staff, and it's something that they did well in Cleveland, the last 2 years, Evan, we come in here and it's like, early October, and I have to get my take off about too much Ramondre Stevenson, and you're going to run him into the ground.
You're the one that was making fun of me for caring about the running back depth.
No, it's not even the depth. They had the depth. They just wouldn't give the ball to anybody else.
Yeah. Well,
remember that game against Detroit 2 years ago where they're like up 30 with a minute to go, and Kevin Harris is right there, and they're still making Ramondre Stevenson run between the tackles.
It's a Belichick thing.
Right. So I'm hoping that this year, it's not that I don't think Ramondre is a good player, but I think realistically, if you scale back his workload a little bit,
an even better player.
He'll be more productive in the opportunities he has. And a guy like Antonio Gibson should give you an opportunity to do that without losing too much. So 265 carries is a lot. I don't think he's getting that. He's 300 touches in 2021.
I think he should be at 150.
I'd say somewhere between 150 and 200 is a good number for him.
Just especially based off of how much I think they're going to want to run the ball in general.
Look, Stevenson was I think 8th last year in touches because he's their leading receiver too before he got hurt, or maybe when he got hurt he was 8th in touches.
I look at those two guys and I don't know. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, so I don't know what Kareem Hunt's volume was in Cleveland, but I think that their roles, in terms of how they're used stylistically, are going to be very similar to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt was more of like the sub-package pass game back, and Nick Chubb was their workhorse. He was their first and second down guy. I think that there's a chance that Gibson has a little bit more volume. If I'm remembering off the top of my head, I don't think Kareem Hunt touched the ball a ton in Cleveland. But in terms of how they're used schematically, I think it's going to be similar. And
Kareem Hunt had, I'll tell you,
there might have been 1 year where they ran the crap out of the ball. Where both of them got it.
He had 230 touches in 2020.
Yeah.
He had 150 last 2 years.
Yeah, that's where I think Gibson is 100%.
You want to? So I was trying to find something. You want to hear something crazy? No qualifiers. Do you know who led the NFL in yards after contact per rush last year?
Derrick Henry?
No.
Christian McCaffrey?
No qualifiers. It's Patriot.
Oh, no qualifiers.
No qualifiers.
As a running back?
No, well, he's not a running back, but on rushes.
Kendrick Bourne?
Nope.
Who is it?
Tyquan Thornton.
Oh, my God.
Tyquan Thornton averaged.
Because of that one run against, was it the Chargers he had on the end?
Yeah, he had 3 carries for 51 yards last year. He averaged 16 yards after contact per carry.
Doesn't count. All right.
I'm looking at it right here. It's real.
Yeah, because remember, it was the Chargers, right? The
Yeah,
Chargers
yeah.
game. He had that one, and he should have scored, but Devontae Parker stopped blocking his guy for some reason.
Right.
Gary emails in,
Brandon Bolden was top 20.
particularly in the first practice, the staff needed to figure out who and what to prioritize in the rest of OTAs. That determination is the first of many important influences on the decision of which 3 QBs to keep. Okay.
Hey, you read that really quick.
That part's not the important part.
Oh, okay.
You're clearly counting out Bailey Zappi, but the staff is not. Remember, they saw him in real NFL games with last year's Lazzy offense. Gary, I am here to tell you I'm counting out Bailey Zappi. I'm counting him out. It's not because of anything that Bailey Zappi has done. It's not because I think he's a bad guy or a bad locker room influence. I think all that stuff is a little bit overblown. But I'm counting Bailey Zappi out because he does not have a role on this team. He is not a mentor to Drake Maye. He's not an experienced veteran. That's Jacoby Brissett. And he's not Drake Maye. So he has no role. I'm counting him out. I'm sorry. There's just no purpose for him here. What is the ideal path? What is the ceiling for Bailey Zappi here? That he beats out Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah, and starts 8 games before Drake Maye. I look, to be fair, I won't entirely count him out in that regard, just seeing the way they're doing
Count
reps
him
at
out.
practice. Bailey Zappi, at the longest, has 1 more full season in New England. That's it.
I just feel like unless he turns a new leaf as a teammate from what we've seen, and he becomes a guy that will embrace being the bridge quarterback / mentor to Drake Maye / backup eventually,
because that's what he is. He's a good backup quarterback.
Right? And I'm not even talking about him being here long term. I'm just talking about him being here next season, unless he
next season being 24 or 25.
24.
Okay.
If he completely changes his that's what he's gonna be Jacoby Brissett, right? He's gonna keep the seat warm.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a mentor to Drake Maye. And maybe by keeping the seat warm, he plays some good football, and then in 25 he goes someplace else and gets a chance to compete. If that's what he's gonna do, then okay. I have not seen that side of Bailey Zappi yet. The side of Bailey Zappi that we have seen has been the one that thinks he should start over Mac Jones and has competed like such, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not blaming him for wanting to compete and wanting to play. I'm just telling you that that's not where the Patriots are at. The Patriots have married Drake Maye. They have married him.
So, yeah, he would essentially have to do what Brock Purdy did to Trey Lance,
right?
Which I just don't think is happening because
comparison.
Brock Purdy was able to do that because of all the talent he had around him. So, again, I won't rule out Bailey Zappi somehow sticking on the roster this year and maybe starting a game or two just because seeing how they're doing things at practice. But there is no long term for Bailey Zappi in New England. There just isn't.
Yeah.
And the fact that he seems to be, that he seems to how do I want to put this? He's got to be okay that Drake Maye was drafted to be the face of the franchise.
Yeah.
And if he's not, it's really tough to justify keeping him here.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, Lawrence is in Indiana, if I can get the mouse to work. What's up, Lawrence?
What's going on, guys? First time call, a long time listener.
Love it.
Thank you.
My question pretty much is just at least my thought process is kind of understanding is that offensive tackle, you want to protect the blind side of your QB first. Is there any reason why we are trying to force Onwenu at right tackle rather than putting him at left, considering we have such problems with left tackle right about now? Thanks for the call, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Lawrence. I think the biggest thing that you talk, blindside protector, all that kind of stuff. In order to be a left tackle to most people, you really want that left tackle to be a high-end pass protector.
Right.
So Onwenu is a bulldozer, great run blocker, probably a high-end pass protector at guard. But right now, based off the film, he's not a high-end pass protector at tackle.
You also usually get, coming off that the defense's right side, so that blind side, you get the more athletic rushers. So you want your more athletic tackle over there. And the reality, he would have the same issues, I think, that Chukwuekorfor or Caden Wallace is. He's played on the right side his whole career.
Like, you play right guard and then go to right tackle. That's one thing.
That's a easier move.
Yeah, going from right guard to left tackle is a big change.
It's not worth putting all that on his plate.
Yeah, I think that that's the biggest thing is I think that we're starting to get into a world in football where it's a little bit more even, right tackle, left tackle. You got to block the same guys, right? And a lot of the time now there are guys in that are specifically guys that like rushing over the right tackle. TJ Watt is one of them. He's one of those guys that prefers, for whatever reason, probably, which hand is down, which foot is forward, all that kind of stuff. He prefers to rush all over the right tackle. So certain matchups, the right tackle is going to have the harder matchup. It's not like it used to be. Back in the day with like Lawrence Taylor and stuff like that, they always put him on the blind side, and that was what it was, right? Now guys are more preference based. I think Max Crosby is another one that likes to rush over the right tackle more than the left side. Those two guys are two of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Von Miller was notoriously a right tackle pass rusher. Yeah. So we're talking about some of the best over the last decade in the league that have rushed over the right tackle. So it's not universal. So I understand why the question is a good question. I just think that's a very big undertaking for Onwenu, and I think his skill set fits more on the right side than the left side, which is what I think that they are getting at. All right. This is a question from Nathaniel. He's asking, when it comes to position coaches, what kind of technique instruction are they doing versus the trainers, the off the site trainers, like the Quincy Averys of the world or the Jordan Palmers or like those types of guys. It's an interesting question, and I think what he's asking more about receivers, but even offensive line. He mentions Chooks Okorafor talking about Scott Peters being like a technician and things like that. I think what's really interesting more about this question than what they're actually doing, the coaches, they're good coaches. They understand their technique of their positions. They're talking footwork. They're talking hand placement. For receivers, it's really broken down into three different categories: release, top of the route, catch point, right? Like those are the three different things that you're really drilling a ton. I think the interesting thing about quarterback, though, and you hear about this a little bit happening, you got to make sure that whoever Drake Maye is working with outside the facility when he goes and between training, mini camp and training camp, like in the month of June, and the beginning of July, I'm assuming he's going to go work with Clyde Christensen down at North Carolina, who's been his guy. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume that's who it would be. You definitely have to make sure that you're teaching the same things. If he's going to Jordan Palmer and Jordan Palmer is telling him to do one thing, but then Alex Van Pelt is telling him to do another, then you have a problem. Yeah. That's why a lot of the time with Bill, that was the whole Alex Guerrero thing, right? Was that Bill wanted Brady to follow his regiment. Alex Guerrero did things a little bit differently. Now, Guerrero was more physical training than he was like quarterback technique and things like that. But in general, like that was the whole argument that they were having, was Brady wasn't lifting weights and he wasn't doing all that kind of stuff. He was doing his own program. You got to make sure everybody's on the same program. And that's the biggest thing. But yeah, the coaches here, the position coaches this time of year, not necessarily in season. In season, you're game planning, you're scouting opponents. You're talking about, TJ Watt and what his go-to pass rush move is. You're not talking about hands and feet and all that kind of stuff, but that's what you do this time of year. Pad level, hands, feet,
shoulders,
angles, angles into blocks, those types of things. Like that's all what goes into offensive line. And I think Scott Peters is going to do a good job with that. A few other things about OTAs here on my list. Got to pull up my list. What'd you think about Juju? And what do we think about Juju? I think this is a topic. People are talking about this a little bit. He had some things to say. Talked about now he's 100% versus being 60% this time last year. He also said the vibes The vibes in the locker room are immaculate.
Yeah.
We'll see. I just his
Are you gonna
future is interesting.
you claim that you were quite the shooter? Are you gonna ask for a shot on the basketball hoop in there?
I claim to be quite the shooter.
Yeah.
I am.
You've said you could hit a 3 in an NBA game.
If I was wide open, 100%.
How are you getting open?
I'm gonna stand in the corner.
Do you know how fast these guys
I'm
close?
gonna stand in the corner.
Do you have any
Jason
concept
Tatum's
how
gonna
fast
drive to
these
the
guys
hoop.
close?
I'm gonna be in the
How long these guys are?
I couldn't hit some of the threes that Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser hit, where there's
Of course
nobody
those are the
within
guys
10.
those use.
There's nobody within 10
course
feet
those
of
are the
him
guys you
because Jason Tatum's got 4 guys converging on him in the lane, and you don't think I could?
All right, so
please.
at some point this year
Please.
when the whole team's in the locker room, I want you to call for the ball and get a shot up.
All right, you got it.
I want to see that.
You got it.
Vibes are so good.
The vibes. The 2 things I'll say about Juju. One, if he's going to be here because of the money, which is a possibility, like it's a $10 million, $10.5 million dead cap hit to just walk away from him. Maybe could get traded. I doubt it.
Kansas City.
I think you also have to factor in the fact that Kendrick Bourne might not be ready for the start of the season, so that opens up a spot for a short-term spot for somebody like Juju. If all things created equal, if Juju Smith-Schuster is healthy and they're getting Kansas City Juju Smith-Schuster, that's a good football player. Like I understand that we're all sour on Juju from last year. It was a disaster. It was horrible. All true. But if it was truly health related and his knee is truly better, then I don't know. Like, it's not a bad thing to have another good receiver.
It's not. How does he make the team? Because you're going to have, Pop and Bourne are locks, and I think Bourne will be ready. You have Pop and Bourne are locks. The 2 rookies are obviously locks. KJ Osborne, we think more likely than not, is going to make the team because of his contract.
His contract's easier to walk away from than Juju's.
All right, so you basically have KJ Osborne, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Reagor for the last spot. Keep in mind, Jalen Reagor can return
6.
I don't think they're keeping 6. If they keep, then all right, then for 2 spots, Jalen Reagor can return kicks.
Yeah.
KJ Osborne was chosen by this front office, unlike the other 3.
Yep.
I just think it's an uphill battle. I think the best case scenario is Juju looks healthier in camp and they trade him. I think that's the best case scenario.
I agree that it's an uphill battle. I will say though, we were talking about earlier the type of receivers that fit. He kind of fits. He's a bigger, thicker guy that can block, that's physical, that
this
can
goes
run
back
with
to the reps thing.
catch.
I want Jalen Polk on the field.
I agree.
And there's overlap there.
I agree.
I want Jalen Polk on the field. I want Jalen Polk playing.
The type of receivers that have succeeded in this offense, he's more of a fit for this offense than he was for the Bill O'Brien offense.
I get that, but I play the kids.
I'd also say the same thing about Tyquan. But we're not doing Tyquan again. I'm not doing it.
He's got no guaranteed money on his contract. That's going to be a really tough one for him.
They don't have burners other than him, unless you want to count Pop, who's like a different kind of player.
And I actually think Reagor would make the team over Thornton.
Just because of the returnability.
Not quite the same speed, but he has the returnability, and there's your burner.
Somebody's got to hold the post.
Somebody's
got to hold the post.
Javon Baker.
I think Javon Baker's going to hold the post at 4.54.
But he's that deep. You got to be honest about him deep, even without his speed.
We talked about this when he was drafted.
Are they going to keep Thornton just to run wind sprints?
Maybe. We talked about this when he was drafted. He was drafted for this system. Like they thought they were going to go this way with Matt Patricia. If there's a system that Tyquan,
all right, but now you're keeping 6-7 receivers. Like,
let me put it to you this way. Let me put you this way.
Yeah.
If there was a system that Tyquan Thornton was going to be a successful NFL player in, it's this system.
Sounds like you're doing Tyquan again.
I'm not. I'm just telling you I'm not telling you that he's going to be able to do it.
Okay.
I'm just telling you from a stylistic perspective, because all this offense is on first and second down is play action, bootleg, and we're running across the field. That's it. They're not going to ask him to break down to the top of the route. They're not going to ask him to run an option with a 3-way go, and you have to decide, and you have to make a move, and you have to get open. They're going to say, you have the deep over, you have the underneath crosser, you have the slide route, the submarine route at the line of scrimmage. Go. That's all they're going to tell them. And at 4.28, that's what that does. Right now, he's got to go out there and actually play well
and catch the ball
and not get hurt every time he falls to the ground. Right? Like that's on him. And I'm not doing it in that respect. Like, I got to have to see it to believe it there. But in terms of stylistic fit, him and Juju are not terrible fits for what they're going to try to do offensively. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
You got to cut somebody. And I don't know if they move on from KJ Osborne, who's new, or they bury the rookies just to go back to Juju Smith-Schuster, just to go back to Tyquan Thornton, and it doesn't work. That's such a rough look. That's such a bad look.
I'm with you. I'm just trying to give I'm making the case for Tyquan. That's all.
Right.
I'm not saying that I think it is going to happen. I'm just got to make the case for everybody.
I think it's going to end up being the rookies, Pop, Bourne, Osborne, and maybe Rager. Yeah. I think those are your receivers.
If they feel like Rager still translates on this new kickoff rule,
he should. He really should.
Then he'll make the team.
He absolutely. This is so perfect for him. He really should. Unless they feel like Marcus Jones is just going to hand, because they have other guys that can do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He's got to be better at it than Marcus Jones. He's going to be better. I'd give Antonio Gibson a look. I think it's a good fit for his skill set. I wouldn't try Pop. It's a good fit for Pop's skill set, but he gets hurt a lot. He's a small guy. I wouldn't expose him to that.
Gibson's a good shout because it's a running back thing, but he's got speed.
Yeah.
Like it's
even
good,
maybe you might be the one who I was talking to somebody who was talking to people at Florida State who were like really excited about Jaheim Bell. Was that you?
Yeah.
In this format.
I don't know. He would have the ability to maybe like return in chunks.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have the breakaway speed to like hit a 95-yard return.
There might be some teams, and we'll see if the Patriots are one of these, because everybody's going to have a different approach to this. And just from some people I've talked to, right, I think there's going to be teams that look at it and say, we want a home run hitter back there. We can set up home run plays. But the thing about setting up the home run plays, they don't always work. There may be some teams that look at it and say, we can scheme this up that we start with the ball at the 40-yard line every time.
Right, 20, 25-yard chunk.
Right.
Is what I'm thinking.
And if that's what you're looking for, like Jaheim Bell is that guy.
You go look at him at South Carolina as a running back.
Yeah.
And then you look at some of the scheme touches that they gave him at Florida State. If you're one of those teams that is okay with the fact that he's going to get caught from behind, so you're not going to have the house calls, but you might have those 15, 20, 25-yard chunk plays.
His average is going to be more reflective of what he does, right? You have two guys. One guy has a 5-yard return and an 85-yard return, and he averages 40 yards per return. Or you have a guy that averages 30, but he's actually returning the ball 30 yards every time. Who would you rather have? It's going to be really interesting to see how all the teams scheme this up.
Yeah, believe it or not, that was actually one of my notes, was that we didn't see any kickoffs.
Yeah.
And my guess is that they're still holding that back a little bit.
They're working on that. I'm so interested, man. I know, but I'm so interested in what that's going to look like.
That's it. That's all you get on that.
You're not a little interested?
I'm interested,
in what
but we haven't
do?
seen it yet.
But okay, so
we have 18
let me ask
minutes
you.
left. I don't want to spend 20 on the kickoffs.
Okay, but I don't think we've actually had this conversation before.
Okay.
You love the X's and O's, and you've always talked about getting a whiteboard in here and actually drawing stuff up.
Yep.
If you were, you understand the rules, you see the rules.
Yep.
What would your approach be to this? How would you scheme it up?
I think there's two different approaches.
Okay.
The first one that I would try is I would run it like power.
Okay.
Where I'd have a double team at the point of attack and then pull somebody through the middle of it and have that be the lead blocker that gets them through the line of scrimmage. Because really what you're trying to do is get them through a line of scrimmage.
Right.
That's what you're trying to accomplish. So by folding the defense and then having somebody pull through, now you have that ability to get that alley going, right?
Yeah.
That would be my first approach. The second approach, which is going to take some cojones, is reverses.
So I was going to say, whatever I'm doing, because there's two, you can either have 10 on the line and 1 back or 9 on the line and 2 back.
Yeah.
I would be a 9 and 2 team.
Yeah, me too.
I would always, and I'm not going to run the reverse every time, but I would always
have the threat of it.
Have it there, and you can give the looks. You can fake the reverses and things like that.
Because you can hold the backside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. I think to me, that is going to be the hardest. If you can execute it well enough, that would be the hardest thing to defend.
And maybe that's what you do, where you have your home run guy is one of the guys back.
Yeah.
And then you're, more consistent, put Jalen Rager in one spot, Jaheim Bell in the other, and now they have to be ready for both. And if you really want the home run, you run the reverse with Rager around Bell, things like that. Coverage-wise, I would almost play it like zone. I would actually drop
like 3 different layers.
I would layer it. I would actually drop some guys back, and maybe you concede a little bit of yardage. But I know I'm from watching the XFL. I remember this. There were teams that would just initiate contact at the catch, and the problem is you have everybody moving forward,
And it's all
one guy screws up,
or you get clumped together or something
right?
like that.
One guy screws up, and now it's the kicker. And that's one other thing I would do with this. And we've talked a little bit about this. I would figure out between the kicker and the punter who's the better tackler, because that's going to matter now.
Oh, it's got to be Behringer. Ryland's tiny.
Well, we don't know who the kicker is going to be.
That's fair. I
would think Behringer's a better tackler between those two.
The layer is I think an interesting theory.
I would play it like, instead of playing it like gap, all right, you're going to fill this gap, you're going to fill this gap. I would be, you like just lanes. Occupy blocks, right? You occupy blocks in this area. You go in this area. I'm bringing a couple guys. Maybe you're going to drop back 5 yards on the initial, and you're going to kind of play behind. Use the linebackers for that. That's how I'd cover it. I would not try playing gap, because you blow one gap, that's where those home runs are going to be. I would play it a little bit safer, maybe concede a little bit more return, but limit the ability for the big play.
And I know I said we're not going to do 15 minutes on this, but last thing on this.
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated about the...
This is what we do. This is like a real football conversation.
I'm real fascinated about the body types that they use, because...
I think you got to vary it.
Well, I'm more talking about body types at the point of attack.
Okay.
Because now I think you're in a world where, like, is Devon Godshaw going to be on kickoffs?
I think you need to be more mobile than that.
Anthony Jennings is definitely...
Anthony Jennings. So Keon White's
That's
the kind of guy. Anthony Jennings. I don't think you're going to put a tackle out there, because remember, they're still 10 yards apart.
I know, but if teams do what I think they're going to do, which is they start doubling at the point of attack, I just think there's a lot of that going on that's going to go on. To me, it's a run play.
But here's the thing. So if I see Devon Godshaw out there, because remember, it's spread out the length of the field. It's not narrow like a scrimmage play.
Make him run.
I'm going to single block Devon Godshaw and make him chase down the returner.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think
I look at edge setters as
setters.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll put Juwan Bentley out there just because the injury risk, but like,
maybe I think linebackers, I think Taki, Jennings, Keon is a good call. Like, I think those guys.
Honestly, Marte Mapu's a fantastic fit for this. So
he's going to play special teams no matter what.
I think it's edge defenders, maybe some of your more athletic defensive ends and box safeties. That's going to be your coverage team, and then your return team is going to be tight end, like not the returners, like the up guys. It's going to be tight ends, and I think you might see teams carry more tight ends now because they can block on the run. They're good at blocking on the run. It's going to be tight ends and your more athletic tackles.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And maybe if you have like an H-back kind of guy.
A couple more things. It was great to see Christian Gonzalez back out there, looking like Christian Gonzalez.
Yep.
Christian Gonzalez he moves. He's just a freaking awesome athlete to watch in practice.
It's like he's ice skating.
Yeah, he had a couple reps that they were doing positional drills, and just he's doing like a mirror drill, and just how side to side movement that he can just pull out and flip his hips and get up the field so smoothly. That I could, I got to be careful and not get in a room by myself on Christian Gonzalez. Like that guy moves like a ballerina. Is it hyperbole to say that Christian Gonzalez might be the best player on the Patriots right now?
I mean, there's just sample size just really isn't there.
He
has the potential to be.
When I watch their practices, and granted, the other guy I think that's in the running wasn't there, and Judon, and he's also just not going to be this type. Like, he's not going to be a ballerina on a practice field type of player. But when I watch their practices, there's one guy to me that consistently moves different from everybody else, and it's Gonzalez. Like, he's the one guy that I look at, and I'm like, that is a stud athlete. Like, that is a blue chip NFL athlete. The other guys I think are all kind of clustered together, as solid NFL athletes, good NFL athletes. I think Christian Gonzalez moves the best out of anybody on the Patriots roster. He's just an excellent movement.
I'm not willing to say he's the best player right now because, again, that sample size is
I think
so
by
limited,
the end of the year we might be
there's a
saying
real
that.
chance by the end of the year we're saying he's the best player. I need to see a little more before I say something like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
This is an interesting one just from the YouTube comments on the kick return thing. Jotham Russell, rugby player.
Yeah. I feel like the pitch is going to be a thing, and like executing the pitches like a rugby player would. I know this is maybe more talking about like tackling and stuff like that maybe, but executing a rugby style pitch as a part of this whole thing, I think would really be advantageous. Like, I think you could really do some damage with that, because especially if
so there was one team that they had the two returners back and essentially ran it like a read option.
Right, that's what they do in rugby.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a not a big rugby guy, but my college roommate played rugby in college, so I would go to a couple of their games, and he, they obviously have it's like an option pitch, and they'll have somebody kind of running a little bit behind the guy with the ball on the outside. If you can 2-on-1 somebody on the outside in this situation and then execute the pitch, then that guy's gone. Like, that's how they score in rugby. Like,
I don't know how you can't be excited about this new kickoff.
I am excited.
No, I know you are, but like people in general, it's going to be annoying. It's a real football play.
Yeah.
People are like, it's gimmicky. Like, it looks gimmicky. I understand that it looks gimmicky. Once you get past the initial aesthetic of it, this is a real football play that's going to be going on. And it's going to be interesting to see how different teams try to scheme it up.
To me, if there's anything that it's the most like, it reminds me the most of rugby. And if you can execute that pitch, and like I said, you can 2-on-1 somebody on the outside, like that's how like a ton of tries, as they call them, are scored in rugby, is by getting out on the perimeter. Then you 2-on-1 somebody, you pitch it to the guy, or you keep it, if he jumps the pitch, and then you're off. A couple of other things really quickly here as we wrap it up. We mentioned this earlier in the show, just slot corner, outside corner, that kind of thing. Alex Austin and Marco Wilson, I loved that. I loved giving those guys the opportunity at outside corner. My ideal, and I know you touched on this too. Yeah. Gonzalez obviously is going to be at one spot. Maybe Austin or someone emerges for the other spot, and then you can kick Jay Jones back inside.
I think you're looking at Austin, Marco Wilson. We'll see if Isaiah Bolden can pick up where he left off last year.
Yeah, maybe. I would throw Dial in there too.
Dial, all right. Mikey Victor, we can keep going.
No, not Mikey Victor. Just Dial.
Did you even watch him or
not a ton?
All right,
maybe like one game.
He's got the size that I'm like, all right, let's see what it looks like.
The other thing, Keon White. I'm still wondering with Keon White. Love his attitude. I think that there's a skill set there. I'm fascinated to see if they can. He's a tweener, and I'm fascinated to see if they can get it out of him to be a consistent impact player. He's got tools, and he's got that. He's definitely got the intangible stuff, right? Like he's ready to run through a whose face, But I think the biggest thing with him is he going to stand up? Is he going to have his hand in the dirt? If he does both, is he ever going to be effective enough to do them both at a high level? Like I still am concerned about where he fits, how he fits, and if they're going to be able to figure him out. It's a tough one to figure out because he's a little too light, if you ask me, to be a 3-4 end. Like playing 3-4 end at 285 is going to be tough unless they're truly allowing him to shoot gaps consistently.
Well, I've talked about being more aggressive.
That's going to be tough. Like you're going to get double teamed and you're going to get blown off the ball at 285 in a 2-gapping scheme. Being up on his feet at 285, now you're talking about being too heavy to be up in space and up on your feet. I like him. I like his attitude. He's a fun player to think about conceptually. I just don't know where he fits in this defense. Like in a 3-4, in a true odd front mechanic defense, I just don't know exactly where he fits in this whole thing.
We're going to find out.
The other thing I wrote down was Devon Godshaw's situation. I think that this bears watching. I think we all know that Judon's situation bears watching. Devon Godshaw's in the last year of his contract with the Patriots, and I think he's looking for a new deal. So I think this is
guaranteed money this year.
It's an opinion, okay? Don't aggregate me, all right? But I think that Devon Godshaw's situation is more than just like he's a veteran that doesn't feel like showing up to OTAs. Like I think there's a little bit something there. And when you start to play Jenga with the Patriots defense, you moved on from Lawrence Guy, which I think was an okay and sort of right thing to do.
Yeah.
You pulled Devon Godshaw out of that. You pulled Judon out. Like you're starting to pull some veteran staples, guys that you can really count on, reliable players on that defense. So I'm interested to see what ends up happening.
This is where, to me, we talked about nose tackle, or at least defensive tackle, being like a sneaky need for them this offseason. They never really addressed it. So
he's got to be here.
Yeah.
He's got to be here. He's not on the same level as Judon in this respect, but in a smaller sense, if they want to have any chance of being competitive next year, I feel like they still have to hang on to some of these veteran guys. Judon is a bigger piece, obviously, but on a smaller scale, a guy like Godshaw, I think, is still important.
He's only 29, so it's you can give him a couple years too.
Yeah, I think he wants the moolah. All right, before we wrap it up, Connor from Florida is asking the real questions of us, Alex.
Okay.
And that is of the Boston Celtics and what is going on at TD Garden. You knew I had to hit on this.
Yeah.
For
I thought it was
going
to be about. Did you watch Jake Bates? He had another big field goal.
I did hear, and people are tagging me on Twitter.
Keep tagging Evan in UFL content.
But Connor is talking about the national media and their reaction to Jason Tatum. I am not ready to pick on the national media yet because I've seen this movie before. You pick on the national media and everybody that doubted you after you win the title. Like when we're all at the parade.
So you're not confident enough in them to start talking?
But when we're all at the parade in 3 weeks, that is when you can start picking on everybody, right? Like when in 2018 with the Patriots, when they rattled off the last Super Bowl, that's when we made the shirts and got on Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd and all these hacks, right? Wait until you win the ring. Then you brag. Then you put everybody in their place. With that being said, you covered the game on Tuesday. I was at the game as a fan on Tuesday. One of the best live basketball games I've probably been to.
That was an awesome game.
In quite a while, probably since like the Paul Pierce KG Celtics. Atmosphere was off the chain.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with these crowd mics. Like, it's not coming across on TV the way that building was electric.
It was electric. We are obviously not old enough to have seen Larry Bird play it with our own eyes, unfortunately. But I've seen the highlight of Larry Bird stealing the ball underneath the basket and passing it to DJ a million times. And the Jaylen Brown steal Pascal Siakam play was so I know he didn't score right off of it, but it was very reminiscent of that, where the game was over for all intents and purposes, and they literally stole the game from Detroit back then with Larry Bird and from Indiana on Tuesday night. Great atmosphere. I think the two biggest moments that were when they got the ball back, late before the Jaylen Brown shot. I got a little excited. I was like, all right, like, you still got a chance. This isn't over yet. Then they hit the shot, and I did a fist pump or something. I was pretty excited. When Jason Tatum hit the 3 in overtime to give them the 4-point lead, I went crazy. Like, that was when I lost my mind, because that was when I was like, oh my God, they're actually going to win this freaking game. So that was incredible. I think this series is going to be very similar to, remember that Brooklyn series in 2022? They swept Brooklyn in the first round, but each game was pretty close and competitive. So it wasn't like a true like butt kicking. It was honestly a very competitive sweep, if you can have one of those. I wonder if this series is going to be like that, where like each game is going to be a bar fight, to quote KG.
Yeah.
But the Celtics are just the more veteran, savvy, better team, and they're just going to end up winning some of these close games that the Pacers just fumble the ball, literally. Tyrese Halliburton. So I wonder if this is going to be that kind of series.
Yeah, we'll see. The big thing for me, like, Miles Turner killed them in game one.
Him and Siakam, their pick and roll defense. And I watched the game last night with the Western Conference. You got to scout ahead for the finals, right?
Give me the all 10, Evan.
If they don't figure out their pick and roll defense, and then they play Luka and Kyrie in the finals, they're going to have issues.
Well, I think what makes it tough, they're getting a taste of their own medicine here, because you have Miles Turner. I don't think he's a 7-footer, but like 6'10", 6'11", whatever
long.
he is. Right.
Long dude.
You can't, like, Dallas doesn't have – Karl Anthony Towns would concern me more, because Karl Anthony Towns is a big dude who can shoot. Miles Turner is 6'11". You want to play drop coverage on the big guy, but he can just hit the shot if you play drop coverage on him, and that's what they've done to teams with Porzingis all year. And that's why I don't think this is a sweep. They need Porzingis to counter a guy like Turner. Turner is going to win the Pacers a game at some point in the series. It'll probably be tonight, just given the way these game twos have gone.
See, I like them tonight. I think the Celtics want.
We've been confident going into every game two.
Change the Juju.
Game two. It's game two.
I think they want it. They're wearing different jerseys.
They're wearing different jerseys.
They know this is an issue. Like, they know.
I know. But I think, and they talked a lot about that after game one. But I just think if they had Porzingis, I'd feel much more confident. This is the first time they're really, because Jared Allen was out, right, in that Cleveland series. I think this is the first time they're really being tested in terms of a big man, especially a big man that can stretch the floor without Porzingis. And you saw his absence much more now. They're getting Xavier Tillman back tonight. So maybe that helps, because that's kind of Tillman's role, and he missed. He had personal reasons. He missed game one. But I still think Turner can. I'm surprised the Pacers went away from Turner as much as they did in the fourth quarter of that game. Turner can still be an X factor.
All right. That does it for Patriots Catch-22. You can listen to Patriots Unfiltered. We'll start any minute now because we just had to talk about the Celtics for 5 minutes, and we're up against it. But one last shout-out to Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. We'll see you guys next week, and stay tuned for Unfiltered.
Bye.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.